So, I'm Cheri Honkala, and before we go back around and have me say a few more things and talk about what we're going to do in this class today, I would love to have everybody go around and to kind of like break the ice or whatever. I want you to tell me who you are. Tell me what you think is significant that I should know about you, and because it's a small enough class. And then also, I'm hoping everybody has paper and pen, because I think we're all going to, as my colleague Galen Tyler would say, we're going to all drop some jewels on each other, and we're not going to want to miss them. We're going to want to capture them. So we want to make sure everybody's prepared, and whether you have a laptop, pen and pencil, whatever. So I'll let you get that organized. And then and just know that there'll be notes and a recording that take place during this. I'm hoping that we have I see Matt called it the organizing meeting, and it's actually not an organizing meeting, it's a class. So the assumption is that I have a few things to teach and that we can learn from each other. And he's going to have everybody on mute. And if you can't hear something, or having a technical problem, or you have a question, does everybody know how to put your hand up? Okay, so you can either put your hand up like this, or you can push the thing that puts, the fake hand up. But we want to make sure that everybody is able to ask questions, and I will take a shot at trying to answer them. And if I can't answer them, other folks can hopefully answer the questions, because we learn collectively. So, so let's start with introductions, and then we'll go back to me. So, Matt, if you've got a full screen, I have to go back and forth.
Sure.
If you could call on different people, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to call in order that I have them here. So Ellie, if you want to unmute yourself and give an introduction, anything significant to know about like who you are and your history with organizing.
Hi, I'm Ellie Levine. I don't have my camera on right now because my Wi-Fi is not so great, so it runs smoother on my end if I don't have my video. But I currently go to Temple University as a sociology major. I want to, in my future, I don't know, whatever job I have to do, I want it to be doing towards the end goal to be something positive and something that's helping the world, and not just trying to make my boss, CEO, more money. I'm just, as you know what I mean? So I don't know if I have super high aspirations to lead something on my own, but I would love to have more experience being in a supporting role. And I do have organizing experience. So I'm from Pittsburgh originally. So when I was in high school, I helped organize marches against Betsy DeVos, because I was a junior and senior during all of that drama. And then also we've had, unfortunately, cases of police brutality that in high school I also helped organize marches, and I'm getting more experience with PPERC as an intern now.
Okay, thanks, Ellie. Ben?
Hey, so I'm Ben, he, him pronouns. Don't exactly remember the questions, but just in regards to my organizing experience. So, at our high school, my brother and I co-founded a club that we're trying to transition into mutual aid right now. So that's really what's going on. I don't know. I guess
we're getting involved with the general strike too.
Yeah.
Trying to organize mutual aid databases so that people have access to easily see, in PA, where are the mutual aid groups? Where can they get help and assistance?
Yeah, and it's a mutual aid database, including things like unions and just I guess like other things that might not traditionally fall under the banner of mutual aid. Because just to clear that up, because I know there are a lot of mutual aid databases out there, so this one's slightly different.
Okay. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, you too.
Ava, if you are available to introduce yourself, please do. Otherwise, she's at work, so she can't, she might not be able to talk. Okay, we can have her come back later if she's available. Mary Sue, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I actually feel like I'm kind of eavesdropping on you guys. I'm in Dayton, Ohio, and have just sort of followed Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign from afar for a while, and saw you all in Philadelphia several years ago. I think it was at a democracy convention. But here I'm active with Move to Amend, 28th Amendment, corporations are not people, money is not speech, and also with Democratic Socialist group here, which is a fairly new chapter in this area. There's other local organizations. I really feel like Dayton's been hit pretty hard, and there's a heaviness to some extent within the progressive community, and a lack of energy after fighting tornadoes and the Ku Klux Klan, and a mass shooting, and now we have the pandemic. So really looking for ideas about ways to energize myself and others, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. Glad you're joining us. Rachel.
I'm Rachel. I'm a mother of 4 and new to any kind of serious activism. I've always cared about stuff and jumped into little projects here and there, but only in the past, I don't know, just still pretty new, but always trying to learn more about how to be an effective organizer.
Great. Thank you. Ryan?
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan, he, him pronouns, but you can pretty much call me whatever you want and I'll answer. So I'm pretty new to organizing. I've gotten to meet a few of the people from PPERG, was involved in the community garden clear out on Saturday. We're going to continue that, which is a lot of fun. I'm really interested in sort of, I guess, the intersectionality of what I guess you would call like libertarian socialism and sort of like decentralized horizontal society and the environment and environmental science. So I'm reading a lot of Murray Bookchin, very fascinated by him. And I'm starting to do a little bit of work with Philly Socialists for their they have like a COVID mutual aid response sort of grocery delivery system that they're working on right now. So I'm working on that as well. And just happy to be here with all of you.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Todd, you there? Okay, we can come back to Todd. She's on the line, I see. I'll introduce myself. My name's Matt Pilisher, and I have been doing organizing for almost 20 years, and became involved with like the socialist movement and the anti-war movement around 9/11 and the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, and then kind of organized in a variety of ways for like mass mobilizations, for small meetings, for anti-police brutality, women's rights, LGBT, immigrants, kind of across the board progressive issues. I've also done a little bit of labor organizing with the Fight for 15 campaign, and I've done a lot of like communications work and messaging. And right now I'm doing administrative coordination for Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign. Tot or Ava, if you're available to introduce yourself, and then we'll hand it back to Cheri.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tot. Today of tomorrow. I'm a poet. I've been writing poetry since I was like 7. Over the years, it just got better for me. I use poetry to bring awareness about different community issues. Also, from a lot of personal experiences, I've used poetry. I'm a youth coordinator for the Poor People Economic Human Rights Campaign, and I've been an activist since the age of 17. I went through a traumatic experience being locked up as a young person and charged as an adult. So my take in the movement is to just provide a voice for the young people and to speak for everybody who cannot speak, who is afraid. So yeah, that's me. Today of tomorrow.
Okay, thanks Tot. Thanks everyone for being here, for your introduction. And Cheri, go ahead. You're muted.
They cut off my voice. No. So just so everybody knows, I'm going to ask you this question at the end of our time together. I promise we're not going to go over 2 hours. It might even be shorter. You can't teach everything that you need to learn in one class about organizing. So if people have an interest, we can talk about class number 2. But I'm going to tell you that at the end of this, or sometime through this, you might want to think about, I want you to tell me at some point an organizing experience. I don't care if it was a birthday party, a Tupperware party, a march. I want you to be thinking about one time where you organized something and it was really successful, and then another time it was an absolute failure. All right? So I want you to be thinking about that, and if you're being a thoughtful student, you're jotting down some ideas in class as we proceed. But I want to start with really introducing myself. And for me, it is incredibly important as a poor woman who has been told to sit down, shut up, and I don't have anything to offer in the mix. Most of my life, I have fought to try and make sure that my presence is felt and that people know that I'm in the room. And that has been a very important thing. I remember one year when we were on American and Lehigh in Philadelphia, and we'd organized this massive march to march from Philadelphia to Harrisburg. And literally, when it went out over the news, it said Patricia Ireland had just organized Poor People. She was the president of the National Organization for Women at the time. Patricia Ireland just organized poor women to march from American Street to Harrisburg. So I think a very important thing to do is there's a lot of responsibility that goes to organizing. And I want you to remember ethics in organizing, because I think that as politics gets nastier and nastier, and the situation that we're dealing with, I think it's even more important these days, or it always is, that we honor the people that we get our information from and that we learn from. So I want to start off by lifting up some of those people. I have been highly influenced over my life from the American Indian movement, from Meredith LeSueur, who organized during the Great Depression and got poor women together to write their oral histories and to share those things with each other, and to talk about the very particular experience of not just being poor during the Great Depression, but what it meant to be a woman during the Great Depression. I also want to lift up Nelson Perry, who is from a revolutionary organization called the League of Revolutionaries for a New America, who was was a pioneer in this country around lifting up the fundamental impact that electronics and technology would have on society, and what that meant for different forms of organizing, because you can't really organize around a plant of robots. And then I also want to lift up women in the welfare rights movement. There was a large number of African American women, particularly from both Detroit and also the South, that taught me a lot of the things that I know. And then also I want to lift up Corinne Kumar, that's CORRINE KUMAR. And Corinne Kumar, that's kind of distracting, Matt. Corinne Kumar is a good friend and an organizer who has for her whole life organized the World Courts of Women. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But in terms of today, just in terms of some of my organizing experience, because I think it's really important. There's a lot of people that are just like, oh, I want to organize and I feel passionate about it, but that's not enough to organize. And I've also been a part of some pretty disastrous experiences myself, when people just think all you need is passion, that you don't have to learn, you don't have to learn from different organizing models, you don't have to read, you can just have collective ignorance. And I just know that just having collective ignorance is like irresponsible, I think, in this period in history right now, since we're facing really serious things, that you just proceed and think because you get a bunch of people in the room that basically the right steps to take is not the thing to do. That I think we all have to be intellectually honest and really spend some time every day of our life trying to figure out where we're at and what we're up against in order to take any steps and in order to proceed. And I know some of you might be familiar with this little video that we're going to watch right now, but it's Plato's Allegory of the Cave. And just so people know, my background isn't just in organizing, it's also in education. So I taught, in my first life, I I taught at an alternative school for 8 years. And I feel like in order to be a good organizer, you need to also try and be the best possible teacher, because you're always in the process of hopefully planting seeds and figuring out how to replace yourself. So let's start with Plato's allegory of the cave, and then let's have a conversation and talk about why the hell would Cheri play this?
What is reality? Knowledge? The meaning of life? Big topics you might tackle figuratively, explaining existence as a journey down a road or across an ocean, a climb, a war, a book, a thread, a game, a window of opportunity, or an all too short-lived flicker of flame. 2,400 years ago, one of history's most famous thinkers said life is like being chained up in a cave, forced to watch shadows flitting across a stone wall. Pretty cheery, right? That's actually what Plato suggested in his Allegory of the Cave, found in Book 7 of the Republic, in which the Greek philosopher envisioned the ideal society by examining concepts like justice, truth, and beauty. In the allegory, a group of prisoners have been confined in a cavern since birth with no knowledge of the outside world. They are chained facing a wall, unable to turn their heads, while a fire behind them gives off a faint light. Occasionally, people pass by the fire carrying figures of animals and other objects that cast shadows on the wall. The prisoners name and classify these illusions, believing they're perceiving actual entities. Suddenly, one prisoner is freed and brought outside for the first time. The sunlight hurts his eyes, and he finds the new environment disorienting. When told that the things around him are real, while the shadows were mere reflections, he cannot believe it. The shadows appeared much clearer to him, but gradually his eyes adjust until he can look at reflections in the water, at objects directly, and finally at the sun, whose light is the ultimate source of everything he has seen. The prisoner returns to the cave to share his discovery, but he is no longer used to the darkness and has a hard time seeing the shadows on the wall. The other prisoners think the journey has made him stupid and blind and violently resist any attempts to free them. Plato introduces this passage as an analogy of what it's like to be a philosopher trying to educate the public. Most people are not just comfortable in their ignorance, but hostile to anyone who points it out. In fact, the real-life Socrates was sentenced to death by the Athenian government for disrupting the social order, and his student Plato spends much of the Republic disparaging Athenian democracy, while promoting rule by philosopher kings. With the cave parable, Plato may be arguing that the masses are too stubborn and ignorant to govern themselves. But the allegory has captured imaginations for 2,400 years because it can be read in far more ways. Importantly, the allegory is connected to the theory of forms developed in Plato's other dialogues, which holds that, like the shadows on the wall, things in the physical world are flawed reflections of ideal forms, such as roundness or beauty. In this way, the cave leads to many fundamental questions, including the origin of knowledge, the problem of representation, and the nature of reality itself. For theologians, the ideal forms exist in the mind of a creator. For philosophers of language viewing the forms as linguistic concepts, the theory illustrates the problem of grouping concrete things under abstract terms. And others still wonder whether we can really know that the things outside the cave are any more real than the shadows. As we go about our lives, can we be confident in what we think we know? Perhaps one day a glimmer of light may punch a hole in your most basic assumptions. Will you break free to struggle towards the light, even if it costs you your friends and family? Or stick with comfortable and familiar illusions? Truth or habit? Light or shadow? Hard choices. But if it's any consolation, you're not alone. There are lots of us down here.
Okay, I just want to let people know that periodically you'll hear like ambulance, police, because that's where I live, or very loud music. So let's start with what are some people's thoughts about why the hell would I start a class on organizing with the allegory of the cave?
Go ahead. Is it Dylan?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I thought maybe it would make sense that you'd start a class on organizing with an allegory about the cave, because it could relate to the fact that a lot of us are ignorant about organizing. We maybe have some glimpse, almost like a shadow of what it could be. But when you actually put in the hard work, sometimes it can be very scary, just like seeing the real world. And so I guess the challenge for us after taking this class and into the future is like to step out of the cave without letting ourselves be blinded by what we now know and understand about the difficulties of organizing.
Awesome. Others?
Rachel?
I think it's helpful to think about how we might sound to people who are new to the movement and new to organizing, that you know, the guy who goes back into the cave and is all excited and like trying to tell everybody everything, they're like, this guy, something is wrong with him. Like, so we need that reminder to speak to people where they are and use language that they understand, and not shield them from the real world, but we'll be a lot better communicators with them if we can remember that not everybody has seen everything outside of the cave. I had never seen that before. I like that a lot.
Anybody else? That's pretty well. Do you want more people, Cheri, to talk?
No, I think that's great. So I think it's really hard, and you know, I've been a know-it-all my whole life, but I think the older I get, hopefully I'm getting wiser. The older I get, the more I realize I don't understand everything, and I don't have all the answers, and I don't know everything. I know as a young person, I used to have to like pretend like, you know, like I came out of my mother and I like just knew all the answers to everything. And then when you go to college, right, then they teach you all the other answers, right? And then I met professors and they wrote books and they had nothing to do with my reality, but they were right. So I tried to adopt theories that had nothing to do with the real life experience that I was seeing and that kind of stuff. And then I doubted my own intelligence because I thought, oh my God, these other people are writing books. They're smarter than me. They, you know, they had never, you know, I grew up and lived in 9 different institutions and was taken from my mother, but I felt like everybody else that was writing books about that knew more about that experience or should be the authority on these things. Or the years that I spent in the sex industry, that certainly the women that were in charge of the women's studies department knew about women in the sex industry. So the point I'm trying to make is that I think it's really important that as we go forward, if you're going to be an organizer, you're going to take that responsibility seriously and get busy studying and understanding what's really happening in the world. And we can't just rely on, of course, turning on the news anymore, because that's just an absolute joke. And so let's lean on people that have perhaps been having some success with organizing, and find out, what are they reading? What are they watching? What news sources are they getting their information from? All of these kinds of things, because then you can use these things to fertilize, cross-fertilize, and to grow your knowledge. So let's all try and really struggle to, I think it's irresponsible right now, especially with all the dangers that Mary Sue talked about that we're up against right now in the world, to allow ourselves to just, have collective ignorance. And we've really got to get about the business of studying and understanding what it is that we don't understand. And especially as we go forward in organizing, and we've never organized before, we've never been in a particular community, these kinds of things, right? It really is like the person that runs out of the cave and you're excited, and then you feel like, oh my God, am I an absolute failure, or am I an idiot because this didn't work? And so I want to speak a little bit about that. So over the years, we have taken from many different organizing models, and I'm going to lay out some of those that we've taken from, so that you can do some further studying on folks. The Black Panthers, the Zapatistas, different peasant organizations, the MST, the KRRS in India, and we have the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign initially went out of the US to look at organizing models internationally, because we couldn't find anything, because in this country we only saw the nonprofit industrial complex. That's where, like, you write a grant and then you do what the grant tells you to do, and then you organize a handful of people, and you choose a target, and then you fight for policy changes, and then you get frustrated because it doesn't work, because you really haven't done your homework to really find out that it's the Chamber of Commerce that controls, all the policy changes that you want to make. And then, whether or not you win that policy change determines whether or not you were a successful organizer. Well, forget all of that just for a minute, because our approach to organizing is very different. And I want to talk a little bit about one of our organizing models is the 6 Panther Ps, or the 6 Ps we call them. We've changed and adjusted some stuff for ourselves. And the first one is plans, not personality. And can somebody speak to what they think, what it means to organize around plans and not personalities? Don't make me call on you. No, Matt, you just call on whoever raises their hand.
Yeah, so plans, not personalities. I guess it's the idea that, like, so a lot of groups in the nonprofit industrial complex, and especially, I think we all know this, especially in presidential campaigns, right? It's all about that one person who's going to get the job done. And so the idea is just activating all these people to go out and vote for that person, or go out and canvass for that person. But it's never actually focusing on, hey, what is our goal here, as much as it is on just kind of boosting that person as an individual. So like, you know, a plan, for instance, could be, we're going to have a walkout on this certain day to protest the fact that we don't have personal protection equipment and certain things that we need, like hazard pay, because of these capitalists that are denying it to us. A personality would be something like, you know, there's this certain person that we want to elect as union leader, and we're going to do everything we can to elect this person because they're promising something. But we don't actually think about what we as a union want to agitate for and want to get from the boss. There, I think, is that key difference.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so yeah, that was wonderful. And I think over the years, this is a difficult thing because you're going to want different spokespeople, and sometimes the movement props up different individuals. I've had this experience myself, and with that comes a hell of a lot of responsibilities. In hindsight, I wish I was a librarian. No, I'm just kidding. But it's really important that everybody knows what the plan is, what the goal is, all of those kinds of things, because at any given moment, any one of us could just disappear off the planet. And we wouldn't want, you know, to have spent our whole life trying to get somewhere and change the world, and then the whole ship goes down because, you know, that one individual is not around. And so one of the things that I want to say is and I'm going to use myself as an example in this class today in a whole lot of different ways. But I just want to say that when people ask me all the time, what do you consider to be success? And I am a straight numbers woman. I am all about how many more people can I help grow into the movement on every block, in every city, in every state, across the country and across the world. And that's how I measure success. So I think all of us as organizers, we can no longer go to any event unless we say to ourselves, who am I bringing? Who is the person I'm going to teach today? Everything has to be a teaching thing. I'm so ridiculous at this point. I don't go out to a date. I don't go to the movies. I don't do any of those things unless I have a potential to grow the movement. So I'm constantly trying to figure out how do we grow this thing. And that's how I am with my family too. Is, you know, you get a piece of Cheri if you're helping to build this thing. So anyway, so plans, not personalities, as I talk about myself. Number two, projects of survival. Now, what are projects of survival? Projects of survival are housing takeovers, setting up tent cities, starting mutual aid projects, all of those kinds of things. My friend Nelson used to say to me all the time that you can keep people around for a few minutes and really turn them off by just doing political education and not helping to feed the stomach. And in a lot of ways, the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, before they started this trendy mutual aid stuff, you know, poor people have been doing this every day of their life, you know. My friend's coming today to take my car to take it to the shop. In exchange, I'm giving her some of my food stamps. This is just like a way we live life. And now they call it the fancy term mutual aid. Projects of survival. And later on down the line, if people are interested, we can teach about the importance of trying to move us as a society to reclaim the basic necessities of life. How do you organize to move things from private property to communal or collective ownership as a society? This is a larger question, larger thing, especially since we live in a land of abundance and there is no scarcity. It's only a question of organization. And that I've learned a lot from my sisters and brothers in the MST and in Brazil, the importance of organization. I mean, we could do anything if we have the kind of organization and discipline. So the third thing is political education. And that's pretty much self-explanatory. The more that you'll see in the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, the people that have participated in more political education have been around and have made the most contributions. There's a direct correlation. So as an organizer, you want to invest in not just helping them obtain housing, not just helping them feed their kids and deal with whatever injustice, right? If you have to be just as committed to getting them as much political education as possible, because at the end of the day, they'll come to the realization that they really need to be here. And it's their leadership that we're looking for. So political education. Number 4 is becoming even more and more important now. So community newspapers, having your own blogs, doing your own internet posts. But the 4th is press, because people are looking for direction. They are looking for leadership. They are looking for hope. They are looking for something to believe in. And they are, so putting those things in, whether it's a neighborhood press or, we use the People's Tribune and the Tribunal del Pueblo. And we have like several documentaries and several different things that people have written. We're getting a writing group together if anybody's interested in being a part of the writing group, because we need a lot more people writing what's happening in this world. And I would just say, I'm so sorry, my neighborhood is so loud. I would also say,
it's not too loud for us.
Oh, okay, great. It's mind-blowing here. The next thing is, the 5th thing is to develop to have a program for organizing around the principles of unity. And I think that, Matt, if you could put that up for folks, we're not going to go over it, but we have 16 different principles of unity. And boy, I mean, we fought for months, sometimes almost physically, I'm just kidding, over each one of those principles of unity. And there's some pretty amazing principles that I'm not going to go into right now, but it's really important because when I oops, I lost myself. Am I here?
You're there.
Oh, okay. I just can't see myself anymore. So in terms of the principles of unity, we have, these are very important because I'm going to use Occupy as an example, and I don't want to offend anybody, But some of those spaces were like hotbeds for, can you take us out of the principles for right now? That was kind of like a hotbed for the political police, because there was like no guidelines in terms of like what we agreed upon and that kind of stuff. And you know, most of the sessions, people would get into fights around different identity issues, and people never proceeded to go on with some of the work. It was like every meeting was like a fight. And so it's really important to have, you know, those basic guidelines and agreements in advance, and some kind of process if that process doesn't work out. You know, get a couple people in your group that will work as you know, a grievance team, and work together to come up with a solution if there's problems. But you don't at all want to proceed in this work without having some of those agreements on how to operate or how to be in a space together. And then the last one is protest. So we're having to be even more creative these days now, because, you know, we can't just, you know, gather 10,000 people outside the Democratic National Headquarters in the same way, but we just might have to do it in a different way. We're just really needing to tap into other ideas of letting people understand a different kind of narrative, that there is hope. And again, I just want to, you know, offer the international community as an example. Some of the best organizing experiences that I've seen have been in Africa, have been in Brazil, when large numbers of people have nothing, and you can't use an excuse of not having a budget or these kinds of things. You really have to hunker down and figure out things that are going to move people and involve people and get them to participate. Because the most important thing in organizing are the actual people. Okay, now here's a quiz. What's the most important thing in organizing?
The people.
Yay! Because you're not going to, you have to invest in, like, think about the times that you did something successful organizing. How did you get the people there? How did you make that happen? So I'd like to hear. Let's go around the room. Matt, can you call on people? Or can people offer?
Sure. So the initial question was, what's something you organized that was really successful? How'd you get people there? Or I guess the counter to that is, what was a total failure and why was it a total failure? Looks like
It's
Ben
okay.
is.
It's okay to talk about failure out loud.
Ben, and then Dylan, and then Mary.
Dylan was going to say something.
Yeah, so one success I remember us having was, this was the very beginning of when we started a club that mostly focused on climate change. And we were having a protest, I believe it was it around, I don't know if it was around Earth Day, but it could have been something around close to that, about like a Green New Deal and stuff. And one of the things that was most successful was that one of the reasons that it was able to be successful, we basically went to the flagpole and we had our signs and we were like chanting slogans. One of the reasons that it was successful was because we reached out to other clubs, like the Environmental Club, and organizations that maybe weren't quite as political in the school, but you know, that there were again people who would be sympathetic to our goals. And that's how we had, you know, these mass numbers of people who are showing up. Now, maybe the failure of that, which was that we weren't able to keep that momentum going, and that it didn't really achieve any specific goal. So in a sense, it was both success and a failure. I think that's something that happens a lot with organizing.
Yeah, and just leading into like our struggles with organizing in the past, I know for sure we had trouble with kind of getting people involved and them wanting to stay, and just things that Cheri was saying regarding like political education. Like maybe I think we had a bit much of a focus on that, and we kind of should have moved more to direct action and also just involving people more in the decision-making process, because if a decision is made without you, you feel a bit alienated, like you're not really part of it. And it just would have been better to kind of put more of a framework in place, for decision making. But that's really what we're trying to do now.
Great. Mary Sue, do you want to give your example?
Sure. And it's actually very similar to what Ben and Dylan were just talking about. I tried to hold an educational event about Move to Amend, had about 8 people show up, and I had David Cobb as a guest speaker. I mean, he's nationally known former Green Party candidate. It seemed big to me, right? And yet I couldn't get a crowd there. But 2 years later, he came back, and that time, rather than holding it in a small place, first of all, we held it outside under a tent. We invited other groups, so environmental groups, healthcare groups, people who were concerned about other issues than corporate personhood, but once they heard the message, understood that intersection, how they would connect. And so we got a great crowd. Food helped a lot, that kind of thing. So making it more of a festival and creating that kind of an atmosphere was what made it successful, I think. So paying attention to the people. Thanks.
Anybody else want to give examples of successes, failures? Okay, Ryan, and then looks like Tot wants to say something too. Ryan first.
So I've I haven't had a lot of successes in this area. Like one thing that I don't even really want to say that I've been like trying it, because I've been very, very loosely trying it. But I've been kind of I work as a server and a bartender. And so I've been sort of trying to talk to some of my coworkers, since we're obviously all out of work right now, about being able, or about like organizing, and sort of not necessarily unionizing, but at least agitating for, better benefits and that kind of thing, for restaurant employees under the restaurant group we work for. And I've been trying to talk to people, obviously we can't do it in person right now. So I've been trying to talk to people via texting groups and Facebook and stuff. And I just haven't. It's like I'll send out a message about like political organizing, and then somebody sends back like a GIF or something, and it's like, oh, come on, like I'm trying, it's like, it's just, it's weird, or like somebody will just like send a picture of them like smoking a blunt back, and it's like, that's not what we're talking about. Like I'm all for it, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So that's that.
Yeah. Tot?
A few years ago, maybe in like 2013, I had just like finished creating a documentary with this other organization, and we had like a fundraiser. The fundraiser was definitely successful. We made our quota plus more. We also had like different performances with like children or whatever, because I love children. That's my passion. So that was really successful. The thing that wasn't so successful, because I'm really not a big fan of failure. I feel like if I fail, I have to go 10 times as harder the second time, was just recently just getting back into the movement of like organizing and actually knowing the severity that you can really fall on your face doing this. Especially if you haven't been active. So like I kind of took a break, and I just recently started working with Poor People Economic Human Rights Campaign as a youth coordinator, and I'm trying to like adapt to like this virtual world. And the other youth coordinator, Sandra, we were planning to have a National Youth Speak Out, and Ben was the only person that came. Ben was the only person that came. So when it comes to like numbers, definitely is important. I got super bored, but I definitely winged it. Don't you think so, Ben? That's my failure story.
Yeah. I'll add something. I remember, so from my days working with Fight for 15, thinking that someone saying, yes, I'll be there was enough. So, you know, like whether it's like a demonstration or it's like getting someone on the bus to go to an overnight event, like I was so busy and so overworked. As soon as someone said yes, I was like, great, check. And then I moved on to the next person. And you need so much more than yes. You need like, how are you getting there? Like what, you know, and like continuing to like work on your motivation and checking in with them. So like, it has to be more than yes. In an online world, it certainly has to be more than like a click, I'm attending on Facebook. So one of the failures can be thinking like, just because you had one conversation and somebody says, yes, I'll be there, thinking they'll no, you know, knowing they'll be there, that you need to know how, and you need to continually check in with them, and they still might not show up. Anybody else want to offer any examples, successes or
Hi,
failures?
I'm a co-host, so I can't actually raise my hand, but when I was in high school, it's kind of hard to explain, but like helped with organizing this like educational class for middle and high schoolers, where they would like on, I forget if it was like Monday, Wednesday, or like Tuesday, Thursday, but like the first day in the week we would lead like an educational class about something, and then second day they would volunteer with an organization that had to do with the topic that we just talked about. So it was like part like actually volunteering and then part like education. So I feel like the biggest like success I had with like so we filled our capacity, which was 25 kids. And so I feel like the biggest success I had with that was like strategic like networking and like really people skills. And like I sought out like the kids I knew who had a lot of friends and like convinced the like head one who can be an influencer. Like it sounds like a little manipulative, but it's just like the truth of like finding like the popular girl who like, because I'm like older, so like if I was a senior and like she was a sophomore, like just like reaching out to her and being like trying really really hard to convince like that one person and like putting a lot of effort into that one person, and then like following up with them and like having them bring their friends, or like also mentioning to somebody you know who's friends with them, being like, hey, Jessica's coming to this thing, you should also come. And then like it becomes more of a social thing when like people that they think are cool to hang out with come to something. And then also just like me being like a sociable person, I already had like good relationships, like being an older kid of talking to younger kids. So like them wanting to hang out with somebody who they saw as like older and cool was also like a draw in for the younger kids, like the middle schoolers, to be like, oh, like I know her, but like it makes sense. So it's kind of like personality and like network driven sometimes, but I understand how like when it's on a larger scale of like organizing, then it's not so much of like your personality matters. But I think like that definitely can help in any situation, no matter how big it is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if Ava came on video for a second. I don't know if you have anything to add or time to add, Ava, and we'll just prioritize you when you can.
Okay, awesome. So the little jewels that I would just pull out would be a term that I stole from Pastor Collins, which is, I think we all have to work on situational awareness. Similar to like the person that comes out of the cave and they're like, ah, right? As we go forward, some of the things that you were talking about, Ellie, in terms of like concentrating on this one person, putting a lot of energy into that individual. I think that we have to develop situational awareness, constantly look at who are the people that are around us, where are we putting our energy, where are we putting our time? Are these places that we can pan for gold? Are these people we think are strategically going to be the ones that are going to move? Because just because I'll pick on the socialists for a minute. Just because, let's say, you're around a bunch of socialists doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do anything. Or are going to feel compelled to do anything. And even though with the Poor People's Army and PPERC's organizing model, we really think that one of the key things that we believe in, if you could type it down, is we believe that people that are most impacted by an issue need to be in the forefront of those struggles. And I think that that's really, really key too, because the people of this country really want to hear from the horse's mouth. And I don't think it's just morally correct. I think that there's an important strategy. I remember I used to for poor folks, we really thought, if somebody's got a tie on, if somebody says, I'm a revolutionary, we had all these different ideas about who's going to be willing to carry this struggle to the next level, who's going to get involved and move to amend, who's going to really get involved in environmental issues. And so for years, I just had to really strip away these old ideas of who I thought would get involved in this process. And then I went into, maybe it's this person or, this identity group or that identity group. And then, going back to one of my favorite organizers, Nelson Perry again, he said, you pan for gold everywhere you go, and whoever you're going to take along in this process is who you're going to take along in this process. And it's a big country out here. There are tons of people. If you are wasting your time, trust me, there's another gajillion people down the block who want to do something, who want to get involved, who want to come to your educationals, who want the bread, who want to fix the environment, they might not know it at first, right? You might have to first invite them to, a chili cook-off or some free burgers or, a poetry night or a film night or whatever. But the right people will make it there. So I just want to encourage people, let's get away from spending all of our energy because we think one person, we're going to convince them. We're going to debate with them for hours on chat room, or we're going to invite them for the 12th time and they don't come. So my advice is just, keep going, just keep going, put a little bit of energy. If they don't come, it's a big country. There's a lot of people out there. They want to be there with you. So go after them. The other thing is, are you sure you can't hear my music?
We like it.
Oh, okay. You like my background music? Okay. Back to situational awareness. I should have had a little more situational awareness. But literally, I couldn't go any place in my house and not hear this. But anyway, we had to get better with situational awareness. We can't morally shame somebody for, not getting involved. we have to figure out what are the obstacles to them not being involved. And I think right now, because we have millions of people that are part of this growing new class, right, that want to be involved, that are just dying for some place to contribute and, you know, offer their positive energy, right? You know, we can offer that to them, but we have to be conscious, you know, what are the little creature comforts, you know? Does, you know, Joe have dialysis on Mondays? So maybe I shouldn't have something on Monday. Does Bill, you know, have issues with childcare? So I have to make sure that I've got childcare at my meeting. Would it be enticing to, you know, have a movie because the people I'm around are really getting tired of social distancing and they want to have some sense of community, even if they have to sit in a big park and watch a movie on a sheet, you know, whatever it is. So we really have to, you know, get away from thinking our experience is everybody else's around us experience, and try to adapt our organizing efforts to developing that situational awareness. And then just as a sign of caution, I don't know if any of you follow me on Facebook, I always go through a rant. Mary Sue will like this. I go on and on about corporations and the Ford Foundation and big money and that kind of stuff. And to you young organizers, as soon as they see you organizing tens of thousands of people, they're going to offer you some money. And I'm going to try to tell you right now, don't take the wrong pill. Don't take it. You need to read up on what's called philanthropy. And there's a great article, I keep talking about it, about the Ford Foundation, how the Ford Foundation consciously funds people to preempt movement building and social change, and in other parts of the world, revolutions from happening. So it's really important that you can't just go out there and be like, oh, let me organize a big coalition. You have to figure out, forgive me if you're against military terms, but you have to really figure out who's really on your army, who's really on your side. Because maybe when you pull back the curtain like they did in the Wizard of Oz, you're going to find out you're dealing with Exxon, you're dealing, you know, that environmental group that you thought you were dealing with. They're really getting money from the Koch brothers. They're really getting money from this person and that person. And Mary Sue would be a great resource for that. But one time I was organizing around some environmental issues with poor folks, and we just assumed that this housing coalition in the state of Pennsylvania would be interested, right? No, it's because I can't remember which Shell or something was giving money for affordable housing for families that were being displaced. And so that coalition had no interest whatsoever in working on any kind of environmental issues. So it's really important to look at who you put together in the room, and especially when you talk about putting organizations. And I want to encourage you to develop what Corinne Kumar, who has probably one of the biggest other people besides Nelson that's influenced my organizing. Corinne Kumar talked about developing a new imaginary and a new process of organizing. And I just want to throw this out there for you. that there's something really powerful about listening circles, because there's too many know-it-alls right now in the world, and there's too many people that are going through great deals of absolute devastation, demoralization, and pain, and they want somebody to listen to them. Now, people ask me all the time, oh my God, you know, what makes you a successful organizer? People wouldn't believe it, but like 90% of my day is spent listening. Listening to somebody talk about how they don't know how they're going to make it till tomorrow. They don't have any food. They don't have whatever. And they just, even if I didn't make it that day to go get them the food, they are so thankful and so happy that somebody didn't tell them to shut up for a few minutes and that they had somebody that could listen. And I think that, so anyway, so I want to really encourage the practice of listening, because I also, in my organizing experience, in our organizing experience, we have some bias. We are very much believe in women's leadership and believe in envisioning together collectively what we want to see in terms of a new society and a new world. And that's going to take the imagination of everybody in this process to figure out what that's going to look like. And I just also want to put out there that I think that 90% of the organizing models that are out there right now aren't about envisioning what this new society is going to look like, right? They're busy practicing, you know, a 1960s model of organizing, and that's not what time it is anymore for us in this country. It's 2020. We're dealing with a pandemic. Whenever I get lost, all I have to do is talk to my 17-year-old. And he makes it clear to me again, you know? So we have to like literally wash our brains. You know, we got to wash out all these old ideas. At one point I had to throw half of my organizing books away because they made no sense. They just took up space. And a lot more of my work has really focused on the 6 Ps and doing a lot more listening. And so that's why we've organized, you know, truth commissions, and we've organized the World Court of Women, and all of those things. And the World Court of Women, they just say World Court of Women to have a woman's centered piece, but it's from an international women's perspective, which embraces men and boys and everybody in this process. But that by listening, it's not just a therapeutic thing. We have the answers. We have the answers. Now, that's a quiz. Who has the answers?
We do.
Yes, we have the answers. And we're pioneers, because people have not dealt with a pandemic, with millions of people becoming permanently unemployed, with a literal, you know, like my 17-year-old son says, this is like worse than a science fiction story, with corporations versus human need. We're living it, guys. And so we can be the pioneers together collectively. And some of us that have been practicing mutual aid and a different way of operating in society, we need to get more people to talk about that and that experience, and sharing that and listening and learning from that, and getting away from thinking, you know, is this other model of existing in the world that's going to keep us alive. So I'm speaking something very different than, everybody just, honing down on, Marxism, and, I consider myself a Marxist. I'm just talking about the pedagogy, the entire process is just as important as, whatever it is that we might be studying or learning, and how we disseminate information and how we involve people, and all of those kinds of things. So I'm going to let you in on a secret. You guys ready? Okay, good. When I go to an event that I've organized, I'm never there. I'm basically hydroplaning above myself, and I'm checking out everybody in the room, and I'm assessing how are they doing. So again, it's back to that situational awareness. I'm very conscious of, have I been talking too long? Is it hot in here? Does Tot need to go smoke? Whatever it is, you understand what I'm saying? But that is good. What's going to make you into a good organizer is when you get away from I, and you think more about we, and all of us as a collective. So after many years of organizing, I would say one of the goals, as Corinne Kumar would say, your job is the hydroplane above yourself. And to practice situational awareness and make sure that everybody in that room is being what? Listened to. And if you're not a good listener, then I would practice it. And, no bias against the gentleman in the room here, but rumor has it, you guys got more of a problem with that. But anyway, but for us, it's a huge challenge, right? Because it means getting away from institutional learning and valuing more of the human connections at a time when we're supposed to just all go viral and have no human connections, and the spiritual, whatever that means to people here, and other notions of power in terms of governance. Because isn't that a larger question that we're all going to have to answer? Is other forms of governance. And if you're dealing with populations of people that are on the front lines right now, I don't care if they were a doctor and they became unemployed yesterday, or they're a homeless person out on the avenue, this question of dignity is huge. Because people are, some of the folks that I'm taking food to are hiding behind the door. If they live in the suburbs or whatever, they're ashamed. And they're definitely not living lives of dignity. So another important reason to get people to say out loud what's happening to them and their reality is incredibly important, because that's the common experience that's happening to everybody. Hi guys, my phone's dying and I gotta, okay, we love you, Eva. Okay, so other things that I want to throw out when you look at going forward and becoming the best possible human being, which means being an organizer in the world, you want to also look at international work that's taking place in other parts of the world. And you want to make sure that your organizing work is in sync and connected to the organizing work that's happening all over the world, right? Because we are so, you know, that corny slogan is not so corny, act locally, think globally. It's so very true. But we've got to continue to, you know, first of all, find out the work that's happening internationally, value it, understand its impact on our organizing work and what we're doing, communicate with and learn from. I'm telling you, in the trips that I've taken all over the world and the organizing experiences, you know, I had to not hydroplane once. I was a keynote speaker at a rally in India with the KRSS Indians in India on Gandhi's birthday, and it was over 1 million people. And all I could start thinking about is like, okay, how did you do it? And boy, you talk about some political education, because people did not come there like in their nice SUV and have some lunch. You know, people came there on the top of buses, not in the bus, riding on the top of the bus to come to the event. And so therein lies the importance of, you know, political education, because, you know, the people that were speaking that day at the rally, it was a rally around farmers committing suicide because the government was spraying pesticides over their farm, and farmers were, you know, massively killing themselves. But people came, it's because it's something that they really believed in. So I'm just throwing out some other stuff here before we move on.
We have a hand up,
Okay, hand.
right?
Hey, I just wanted to say real quick, I just linked an article into the chat sort of about what Cheri's saying with like the importance of like international solidarity and that kind of thing. It's a article from Jacobin, but it's about how the AFL-CIO sort of actually worked with the CIA to repress labor organizing in like Latin America and other countries during the Cold War. And you think of like the AFL-CIO as this great progressive organization, but you know, I mean, they're very clearly working with the CIA and other governments to repress labor leaders, which sort of, you know, has the short-term effect of improving things for American labor, but only because you're exporting the poverty and the repression to those third, global southern countries. So I just wanted to throw that in there. It's a really good article. I'd recommend reading it.
Awesome. And then I would throw on top of that, when one of the organizing meetings that I had with the Zapatistas in Chiapas, one of the things that they made clear, and I said it for the rest of my life, and was really moved, is they said the most important thing that we can do for peasant armies and peasant organizers around the world impacted by globalization is to figure out how to get, excuse me, they didn't say this language, but I'm going to say it, the most pathetically unorganized country organized in the belly of the beast. And, you know, when they have meetings of organization, right, like they've got people debating things and they've got people falling off the rafters and packed in the room and all that kind of stuff, right? And I never forgot that, because a lot of our folks, you know, we had a woman that, you know, she was going to graduate from school and she was going to go to Bangladesh and she was going to end poverty. And then she came to understand that, you know, perhaps one of the best things to, you know, ending the misery in Bangladesh was to get people organized here in this country. And I just think with what's happening now, we have a real serious responsibility, especially, you know, well, we're not there yet, but anyway. So again, you know, what is PPERC and the Poor People's Army trying to do in terms of, you know, what is our goal in terms of organizing? And I want to go back to the military structure again, because we think it's really important that we get away from silo organizing in this country. There's a real effort to do identity politics and to, you know, have immigrants over here, welfare recipients here, the teachers over here, the plumber, you know what I mean? And right now, with the fact that people can fall into absolute poverty at any given moment in this country, it's really dangerous for us to continue to organize in that manner. There really is a new class that's developing in this country, and it's having to adjust itself to, you know, many people having to adjust themselves to permanent unemployment. And so with that is a scary time, but it's also an exciting time because we can visualize what we can do if we get organized to reclaim society. And we have a slogan, which is you only get what you're organized to take. And so we can reclaim land, we can reclaim housing, we can reclaim the form of education, we can take back, you know, and have clean water and air, and all of these things, because we don't really believe that there's scarcity. We think that there's an abundance, and that people just don't know. They're involved in like a fight against slavery that's not putting a face on who's responsible for the slavery and or the misery. And I don't have to say this to Mary Sue, but she's been putting a face on, you know, corporations for a long time. And we've got to get away from just doing organizing that says, you know, God, things are really horrible, but we need to begin to put a face on who's responsible from, and so in that makes it a very scary thing. And with that, I want to pause and show the next video. Some of you might have seen this before, and now I want you to tell me why I'm doing this video. It's a short video, only 7 minutes.
Hi, my name is Kiefer Sutherland. Many of you may know me as an actor, but there's something in my background that you may not know, something which I am very proud of. I am also a grandson of the late Tommy Douglas, a premier who brought an enormous change to Saskatchewan and the rest of Canada. He was also the first leader of the New Democratic Party. Using his voice in a recording that he had made in 1962, we'd like to share a story with you, a story that he made famous as early as 1940. It's a story of a place called Mouseland, and it's as important today as it was many years ago. It's not just a piece of history, it's really one of the best explanations you'll ever hear about why Canadians like you and me support the New Democrats. The NDP and the members of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union across Canada are proud to present this animated version of Mouseland. It's a message worth preserving for generations to come and for current generations. So please join me now as my grandfather takes us to a place that he called Mouseland.
It's a story of a place called Mouseland. Mouseland was a place where all the little mice lived and played, and were born and died, and they lived much as you and I do. They even had a parliament. And every 4 years they had an election. They used to walk to the polls and cast their ballots. Some of them even got a ride to the polls. Got a ride for the next 4 years afterwards, too. Just like you and me. And every time on election day, all the little mice used to go to the ballot box and they used to elect a government. A government made up of big, fat, black cats. Now, if you think it's strange that mice should elect a government made up of cats, you just look at the history of Canada for the last 90 years, and maybe you'll see that they weren't any stupider than we are. Now, I'm not saying anything against the cats. They were nice fellows. They conducted the government with dignity. They passed good laws. That is, laws that were good for cats. But the laws that were good for cats weren't very good for mice. One of the laws said that mouse holes had to be big enough so a cat could get his paw in. Another law said that mice could only travel at certain speeds so that a cat could get his breakfast without too much physical effort. All the laws were good laws for cats. But oh, they were hard on the mice. And life was getting harder and harder. And when the mice couldn't put up with it anymore, they decided something had to be done about it. So they went en masse to the polls. They voted the black cats out. And they put in the white cat. The white cat had put up a terrific campaign. They said all that Mouseland needs is more vision. They said the trouble with Mouseland is those round mouse holes we've got. If you put us in, we'll establish square mouse holes. And they did. And the square mouse holes were twice as big as the round mouse holes. And now the cat could get both his paws in. And life was tougher than ever. And when they couldn't take that anymore, they voted the white cats out and put the black ones in again. And then they went back to the white cats and then to the black cats. They even tried half black cats and half white cats. And they called that coalition. They even got one government made up of cats with spots on them. They were cats that tried to make a noise like a mouse, but they ate like a cat. You see, my friends, the trouble wasn't with the color of the cat. The trouble was that they were cats. And because they were cats, they naturally looked after cats instead of mice. Presently, there came along one little mouse who had an idea. My friends, watch out for the little fellow with an idea. And he said to the other mice, look, fellas, why do we keep on electing a government made up of cats? Why don't we elect a government made up of mice? Oh, he said he's a Bolshevik. Lock him up. So they put him in jail. But I want to remind you that you can lock up a mouse or a man, but you can't lock up an idea.
As my grandfather would have wanted, the message of Mouseland is for all the people of Canada. We hope you have enjoyed this production.
Thanks, Kiefer.
Comment? why is it important right now to be watching a movie like this, getting ready for a presidential election? And what does that have to do with organizing? Matt, can you call on anybody that puts their hand up?
Tot.
Yes, call on me. Yo, that was good. I'm feeling inspired. Hold up. I must say. But honestly, it's the truth. Like, we keep putting these people in office and they aren't for us. They don't have our best interests at heart. They are for themselves, and it shows. Like, it really shows. It shows capitalism. It shows how they can destroy us just with like a pandemic, putting us on quarantine, like not really going into the communities where these are issues going on, like police brutality and things of that nature. Children being locked up in charge as adults, children going through the school to prison pipeline, how they constantly keep taking money away from the schools and putting it into prisons. So I'm feeling inspired. I cannot stress this enough. I need those links. I need those links. And Miss Cheri, this is great. Oh my goodness. I don't think I had this much excitement since I've been on quarantine, and this is really awesome. That's my.
Okay. Other people.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so I think that video is good in the sense that it shows us, like, it outlines pretty clearly to me just why reform is not the way to go when we're trying to organize. That's a lesson that Dylan and I just really learned firsthand, because there was a congressional campaign that we were getting somewhat involved in, and then after a certain point, it was just sort of that simple logic of the cat and the mouse, where somebody who has power generally will just try to protect their power when a system rewards it, such as, capitalism just incentivizes greed, the accumulation of power. So then there kind of comes a question, why are we electing people? They're not going to have our interests in mind if they get power and are not accountable. And it's like, that's not really worth our time so much. So I think that video outlined that very well.
Others, but I want to ask, why would I show that? Why would I think that that video is important in a conversation for organizing?
Rachel.
Because it's very tempting to work with cats to try to accomplish our goals, because they are very good at being appealing and acting like they really, but they're a cat, but they care about the mice. And so it's just, it's really, really important for us to be clear-eyed in organizing. Yes, what Ryan said in the chat. What large paws you have. That's perfect.
I'm literally over here crying.
Well, I mean, the part that I would add briefly is that it took me many years. I didn't want to believe this. I really thought we lived in a democracy. And until I ran for office, and my office was, when I was running for office, I was infiltrated by members of the Democratic Party. And I learned a lot from that experience. I learned that most of the folks that are a part of these different progressive organizations out there, and it seemed like the more radical their name of their organization was, the more money they were getting from the Democratic Party. And so the difficult thing is I would think like they should naturally be getting involved in environmental issues or corporate personhood or any of these things. And I didn't understand. I thought, oh my God, am I just a bad organizer? And then I realized, oh my God, they can't. Because some of these friends that are Democrats that are my friends, who I get messages from all the time that are finally realizing that they're trying to get their paws in there into their mouse holes, that they say, Cheri, I can't. I'm scared that my daughter is on the payroll with the Democratic Party at this organization. My brother's sister's uncle is at this nonprofit. My cousin's church relies on the money of the Democratic Party. Especially around election time, guys, while you're organizing. If you can't get some organizations involved in some of the stuff that you're doing, nowadays I say, hi, how are you? What's the name of your organization? And then I vet the hell. I find out who they're funded by. Because as soon as I find out they're funded by, like Maria Quione Sanchez, or whoever, because she likes to put everybody that's in Kensington on her payroll. Pardon? So as soon as I find out, then I know that that church can't let me allow homeless people to sleep in that church, or we can't use it to feed people, or we just had a 1 second. We just had a situation this last week where the Democratic Party basically eliminated our ability to get food from a particular food source in Philadelphia. So it's really important that you, when you're building your troops and your army, because it is a wartime situation that we didn't call for, that you find out where people get their money. And right now, before a presidential election, there's a lot of money out there to get you to work on Biden's campaign right now. So did somebody have their hand up?
Dylan has a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what were some of those groups that you said? Like, what are some examples of groups that, had seemed like they were more progressive or even radical, but like took money from the Democratic Party?
We are being recorded right now. But at some other time when we're not recording this, I will tell you everything you need to know. And especially in the environmental world, oh my Lord, you guys got your work cut out for you. And that's why it's so important that you guys exist.
Yeah.
Matt, Todd
Yeah.
keeps raising her hand.
Clap? No, that's me clapping. I'm sorry.
Oh. Okay, so anybody else want to say anything about Mouseline? It's a good tool to use.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good conversation to have with people. People that are, talking like a mouse, but getting money from the cats. You can always find them in a room because they get very upset by this movie. They get squeamish, like, oh my God. Okay, and so be careful with all your online organizing and stuff like that, because they got trolls everywhere right now, and everything that you think is like a progressive forum discussion is all being set up right now so that they can capture names for their political endeavors. So just be clear of that.
Todd
yes.
has a hand up now. Go ahead,
Okay,
Todd.
Todd.
I just wanted to say Ellie had like a really good question. So I'm gonna ask for her. And she wanted
I
some
can
advice
ask if you
on
want. I was
staying
just telling
positive.
Pot privately.
Go ahead, Ellie.
Basically, I was just saying, like, I feel like you would have good advice, and this is something I'm struggling with right now, is like number one, staying positive when there's so many barriers to what you're trying to get done, and then also other people venting to you and you trying to like give them some hope in like what's going on with society, and like not having like just keeping that hope within yourself so that you're able to pass it off to other people. I feel like it's difficult, and I'm trying to do.
I think the number one, PPERC has a regular study group. If you're interested in being a part of the study group, let Matt know about it. That's one. The way that I deal, I literally study morale. I read books of women during slavery that had to like throw their babies over the side of ships and were part of the Underground Railroad, and books about slave narratives. I read about how teenagers in the Warsaw Ghetto organized resistance during the Holocaust. To other folks, these things might be really depressing, but I literally study how other people dealt with the question of morale during very difficult times where they didn't give up. And I am just like, I think the most important thing in the whole universe right now is young people getting serious, getting disciplined, studying, and taking the lead on this stuff. And again, I mean, they, like the resistance fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto that were teenagers, they understood their crucial role in history, just like young people were the majority of people that filled the paddy wagons during the civil rights movement. And they, they were, facing being, lynched and killed, and so we can't use the excuse like, we're scared of dying from the pandemic and the police state, because there's also been very horrifying times throughout world history. And I'm inspired because I know you guys are going to do it. But anyway, so I would suggest that. I can tell you a million movies where you can get inspired. I can tell you a million books that you can read, but studying this question of morale. And there's a really important book talking about emotional intelligence. And since I am also the victim of capitalism, I was taken from my mother. I was raised in 9 different institutions. It was the most horrible thing that ever happened to me. I had a brother that committed suicide. I was hospitalized. I mean, I had some of the worst stuff that could ever happen to a human being. And I would say that every time I got around any kind of trauma, I would just cry, and I had absolutely no self-esteem and any of these kinds of things, really. And I learned how to, 1, heal through struggle, and 2, I learned about emotional intelligence. That just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean that it's safe, and doesn't mean that it's the appropriate place to break down. So now I schedule my time. I schedule time for my friends to like hold me and love me and have a bottle of wine and go for a walk. So I schedule love, and times to cry. And I think that there's another video, I would love to find it. I think the enemy hid it. It's called Some Kind of War. And it's a video of myself and Maridel Lesueur. And it talks about the importance of writing, Todd. So keeping your own journals and writing your own, you know, real lived experience that you're having is incredibly, I think, mentally healthy. But in terms of like emotional intelligence, I talk about this all the time, but I'm constantly working, and Gandhi has done some writing about this as well. Work on your mental muscle. You don't ever want to become cold and not upset by what's happening in the world, because that makes you not human anymore. But you want to have that shield, right? You want to have that shield so that you can be effective in the work, and then schedule the time for, going for a run, jogging, getting out the rage. You got to schedule it, because otherwise it's going to come out at the wrong time. So that's my 2 cents. I'm getting, I got a few more things I just want to say really fast. That's not good, because I know we're running out of time. But anyway, so we're trying to build something similar to the Earth shift. I want you to try to make in your brain is we're trying to do something similar to the Zapatistas, not to the United Way, not to the Sierra Club, not to, a nonprofit. We are trying to build a population of people that understand whose side they're on. And it very clearly, like everybody folding back, like in the Wizard of Oz, taking back all those curtains and putting a face on, who are those billionaires? Who are those corporations? Can I say their names? Who is responsible? And no longer having each other as the enemies, right? And then focusing on how do I recruit soldiers? And then once you get soldiers, right, how are you going to help create the generals in this process, right? So there's another great movie I would encourage you to watch. It's called Maria. Maybe Matt could find it, put it on here, whatever. Because we're going to need a lot of generals. And what I mean by generals is you no longer just go someplace, right? You're constantly panning for gold, and then you're going to figure out how to put them into this soup that we're making, right? That's going to be delicious. And constantly thinking, am I wasting, doing time management, figuring out, am I wasting time? Am I wasting my life? Where should I be focusing? Where should I not be wasting my time? How am I, in PPERC, anything that I do, I'm constantly measuring. Is this going to help build? And if this is not going to help us build, move on. New thing. It's opposite of what your professors that give you a book because they wrote it and tell you to read it and study it and live by it. If the theory doesn't work, throw it out, because life is constantly changing. The world is changing, and you got to throw out stuff that doesn't work. And then constantly, work on this situational awareness. Constantly put yourself in other people's shoes. Especially in living in the US, we have this US exceptionalism. We think like the whole world is like our life. You got to constantly think, oh my God, let me put on the lens of Ellie. Let me put on Matt's lens, and then also stay away from big money and be aware of what I call big hat, no cattle. Now, a lot of the nonprofit industrial complexes that have lots of big voices, chances are they've gotten big money from somebody, or they wouldn't be on CNN. they wouldn't be on the internet. They wouldn't be, you wouldn't know about their work. If they were challenging real corporations, that ought to answer some questions for you, Ben. If you know, if they're really popular, they got the slickest brochures, the whatever. It's because the bad guys want you to know about them. And I would get in contact with Mary Sue, who can teach you a whole lot about corporations and money. And then, and Move to Amend. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm plugging Move to Amend. But anyway, so then, and also, it's really important that we insist on political education, because too often, especially myself as a young person, getting in rooms with people and everybody is like, okay, let's go make the revolution, but nobody has like sat to read anything, study anything together, debate ideas, and then move from that. We have a responsibility. If we're going to work with people, we're going to organize people, we're going to take on powerful people, then we need to be as smart as we possibly can in this process. And then lastly, I would say you're going to keep people around longer if they're a part of the plan itself, and if there's a heavy emphasis on participation. So one time I took over the Capitol, and we were sleeping on the Capitol stairs, and it was more important to me. Well, it was important that the families got blankets, but just as important were the people that were bringing those blankets. I had to figure out, how do I keep them in touch and into a relationship to this process, right? So you're constantly thinking about organizers, organization. How do you keep people's interest? How do you keep them involved? And yeah, so, and lastly, you can lock up a man or a mouse, but you can't lock up an idea. And that's what we got to do as organizers, is we've got to take these ideas and we got to quadruple ourselves every single day. And then you will be the most amazing organizer in the universe, and I'll be reading about you like you're Gandhi. But yeah, so that's today's series. And if people are interested, you can let Matt know. Other topics I'd like to talk about is, basic online organizing, door knocking, mutual aid, some of these other kinds of things. So, yeah, any questions? Because I'm conscious of time. Comments?
Yes. Hi.
Okay.
The movie, I get on your nerves. I'm sorry, man. The movie Maria, and you named a movie before that. Can I get the name?
The one with Meridel Lasore and you.
Oh, Some Kind of War. And we are going to be showing another awesome movie about organizing. It's called Matewan, M-A-T-E-W-A-N.
I think Ben had a question.
Yeah. When was
Yes,
that
Ben.
movie going to be shown?
Mate
Oh,
one?
did you hear my question? Or yeah, when's that going to be shown?
Oh, no.
Yeah, when is Mate One going to be
When
shown?
is Mate one going to be shown? I'm hoping somebody has a day. We got.
No, we don't have a day yet.
We're planning it. We're planning how to get. We don't have a day yet. We're gonna social distance on the front lawn at the office, and we're gonna show it on the side of the building.
Mhm.
But we will make sure
Yeah.
that you know about it.
I'm assuming Dylan and I are a bit far. Yeah, Dylan and I probably can't attend in person, but would you
Okay.
ever be showing like
You
that,
can-
like maybe a live broadcast of it or something too?
Sure, but you guys can also get it. You can.
I think
you can
your
also go
audio
online
cut
and
out.
get it. And we're,
Oh,
Cool.
okay, yeah,
Oh.
true.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can
Yeah, I can hear
Google Mate One, and you can watch the movie tonight in your home.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, true.
yes, we
Yeah.
will. We're going to continue to do
Yeah.
organizing school because there's so much more to talk about. And I would look up the World Court of Women, Corinne Kumar. There's a great speech of her speaking at the World Court of Women. With the I know, Cheri Honkala. So anyway, so thank you all for coming. I hope that you have taken away a couple jewels. Make sure you spread them around and let's build this thing. Okay?
Okay, great. We'll do it again sometime soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone, for your
Thank
participation.
you.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you.
Love and blessings.
Love you.
Yeah.